Okay, now we're at Make Something Happen 22, which is all about JSON. Nothing to do with Argonauts or anything mythological. This is JavaScript object notation, and it is a tremendously powerful part of JavaScript and a very powerful part of computing in general, in that lots of other programs now use JSON to move data around between them, between various different devices, and it's totally wonderful. And let's find out about it. If you go to the begintocodecloud.com site, we can do all this in the browser, and we're going to scroll down and we're going to find JSON investigation. Could be about a private eye who lives on the edge, but it isn't. Hey, it's about a language facility for moving data around, which is, I think, at least as much fun. So if I go function F12, I'm going to open up the usual place, and I'm going to use the console. And what we're going to do first is we're going to actually build an object which contains the kind of data we might want to send back to the browser when the browser says, hey, where is the cheese and how big is the board? Because these are two things the browser needs to know. And when the game starts, because we know that in this version of the game we now have the server in charge of the board and everything, the browser has to have those two pieces of information so it can draw the board and get ready for the user to start actually entering stuff. So how many cheeses and how big the board is. And so I make a variable called answer, which is what the server will be sending, and I'll make it equal to, and now we can create an object. And I love doing this. This is rather nice. It's a beautiful part of Java that I think is JavaScript, which is great. Width equal colon, how wide's our board? Our board is 10 squares wide. This means that if I wanted to, I could change the way the server works and make enormous boards, and the program would just keep working because the browser would just draw one. And that's what we like. And the height is also 10. And the final piece of data I want to send, of course, is the number of cheeses. I don't tell the browsers where the cheese is, because that would be silly. If the browser knows, that means anybody using the browser can use the debugger to find out. So the browser never knows where the cheese is. It just knows how many there are, because if it doesn't know that, it can't do the counter which says you have found one of 3 cheeses or whatever. It also means you could play a version of the game with 100 cheeses on the board. That'd be very boring. So we won't do that. And I'll say 3 because that's what number. I'll now close off the object. I'll put a semicolon there for luck. I'll do that. So now I have a thing called answer. Remember that when you say let something equals something, that's a statement that returns a value which is undefined. But if I type answer, then it's giving me a preview of what I'm going to get. This is a JavaScript object, and I can pull the elements out of this by going answer dot width, and the number 10 will come back. And so this is a nice way when you're moving data around between programs, it becomes kind of tedious to have to pack them up, because at the end of the day, most data ends up being a string of text which you pass around. We've seen this all over the place in the programs that we've used. It'll be a string of something, might be text, might be binary values, but it's going to be a string, and putting things into strings and getting them back out again is a pain. And this is from a man who must have spent at least 1 or 2 years of his professional life writing code that does just that. Now, what I can do is I can make a string which contains the answer, and I'll call it, in the book, I call it JSON string. So why break from that? Let JSON string, JSON string, I'll have to sing it then, won't do that. JSON string equal. Now the JSON object sits inside the browser, and it's also inside the server and everywhere else you might need it, and it provides a whole bunch of functions, and the one I like the best is the one you can find very easily, and it has the wonderful name of stringify, which actually describes exactly what it does. It says I'm going to take an object and I'm going to make a JSON string which describes it, and the object I'm going to give it is of course the answer, which I can't type today, but I'll do my best. Answer. And so I do that, put my semicolon. Interesting thing about semicolons, you don't necessarily need them all the time, but because I'm a programmer from way back, and I get confused if they aren't there, I always try and put the semicolons in because I am old. but you can leave them out sometimes and it doesn't matter, which confuses and irritates me ever so slightly. So there you go. We have a thing called JSON string. As you might expect, it is a string, and I can look at it like this, and there's a bit of confusion here. There is, I should have a big red button that I could press that says potential for confusion. Actually, I do have, but I can't find it. And I don't press it because I'm not quite sure what might happen. The potential for confusion here is that the string contains double quote characters, right? Because the names of all the elements in a JSON object are given in quotes because it's a string of text. But the whole thing is also a string. So in this description of the string contents, we have two delimiters of different kinds, and it's important you understand where they start and where they end. The single quote, which works in Java to mark the start and the end of a string, is at the beginning and at the end. The double quote in JavaScript, I said Java a second ago, which is not quite correct, apologies about that. The second delimiter is the double quote, which is inside the string being delimited by the outer ones. Maybe I've taken the thing you already understood and made it horribly confusing. If that's the case, I really apologize. But the idea is that in JavaScript we have different ways of marking start and end, and it can be single quote, double quote, or back quote, which is the one which I tend to quite like, and we'll learn maybe more about that a little bit later. But what we have here is a string that contains curly bracket or brace, the word width followed by the value, the word height followed by the value, and the word cheese followed by the value. And if you've taken that in, you've pretty much got an understanding of what JSON's actually doing for us. And JSON is just taking that object and making it into a thing that looks almost identical to how it was declared. So I can squirt that out as a string of text, and something else that understands JSON can actually get that back again. And because, yeah, I'll do a bit of bonus stuff here. How do we get it back? If I have a string like that, how do I get it? Well, JSON, as we saw, let's assume that this is sitting on the server or somewhere else. Received. Even though this is just an example, I'm going to give it a name that makes sense. Received answer equals JSON dot, I'm going to say parse, because that's the thing it wants to suggest, and I'm going to give it my JSON string. So I'm going to give it what we just made, and you'll never guess what you should get back. Well, I hope you can guess if I do that and now have a look at received answer. It contains width, a width property of 10, a height property of 10, and a cheese value of 3. So I can go received answer dot height. If I spelled it right, there you go, and I get 10 coming back. So I've effectively what we might call round tripped this. I've started with an object that I have created at the top there. I've then set, had a look inside, seems fine, pulled a particular property out, that seems fine too, it's what you expect. I've turned it into a string and had a look at that, and the string is good, and then I can receive it back like that. Now this is just string. A naughty person seeing that could actually change that value of 3 to 33 if they wanted to, and the parsing thing would actually just give you an object with a value 33 in there. So it's not particularly secure. And if I do something and give the parse method in JSON a string that doesn't contain an object, I will get an error, as in watch this. I will show you because you are here and I am here and we are all together, etc., etc. If I go parse hello mum, that is not a valid piece of JSON. So I press enter and it blows up, because the first thing that parse expects to see is a curly bracket, because it needs that. It needs the brace, this thing here, to start it off. If it doesn't see that, it says unexpected token huh. I don't like the H from hello mum. It's not valid JSON. Bang. And it throws an exception and blows up at this point. So you can't give it just anything. It's best if you actually stringify your object before you send it. Although you can hand roll JSON. It's just text. You can make it any way you like. But it's what's wonderful. I can send data between, I mean, the sender could be Python, the receiver could be JavaScript. And because they both understand JSON, it's like a universal language for passing data around. It's great, and that's how it works. And now, on with the rest of the book.